IVM.
Close your eyes for a moment and imagine. What would you be doing today had it not been for your day-to-day responsibilities of meeting work deadlines and making sure your family is financially secured? Would you have been a footballer, kicking the ball around on those grassy grounds? Or would you have been an artist, sitting near a window overlooking the hills as you paint away? Maybe you crave to be a photographer. But here you are, framing a picture of the life you wish you had. But this can still be a reality. करो पूरे अपने इरादे, अपनों से किए सभी वादे. SBI Life अपने लिए, अपनों के लिए. To know more about our insurance plans with wealth creation, log on to www.sbilife.co.in. IRDAI registration number 111.
Hi, I'm Utsav, a behavior researcher by training and a slow traveler by passion. Postcards from Nowhere is a travel podcast where I condense a decade of travel experiences and explore not just the where, but also the why and how to travel. My stories emerged from slow traveling the less explored parts of the world: Bosnia and Herzegovina, Armenia, Uzbekistan, and even China. At the end of each story, I give practical tips and new ideas about how to travel better. This week, in the second episode of the series Fabulous Foods, we follow the lives of a tiny dwindling community spread across India. Their story is a masterclass in cultural assimilation and how their foods and cultural practices could show us the path to living harmoniously.
My parents had very humble beginnings, if I have to put it that way. My mom is from one of the coastal villages of Mumbai called Murud Janjira, and my dad is from a very metro city. Pune now is become more metropolitan than it was when he was a youngster then. And I think now about 45 years back, they moved to Delhi.
Miss Malekar's parents' migration to Delhi had a significant impact on her life. She ended up studying in Delhi and eventually made a partial return to her roots as she found work in Bombay. There, she met a young Mr. Malekar, who she ended up marrying, and now they have 2 kids. I met her at my first job in Bombay, where she was in a senior role and came to be known for her no-nonsense approach. But where we really connected was our shared love for food. She was easily one of the most enthusiastic foodies who not only loved experimenting with food, but enjoyed cooking as well. She gushed about how coconut milk just made so many things better, which wasn't really a surprise. After all, her mother came from the Konkan coast, where coconut milk is the norm. She loved poha or flattened rice, but preferred it in a slightly different way than the kande pohe, so integral to Maharashtra. But this seemingly regular life story of Miss Malekar has an aspect that makes her different from most people you would meet in India. About 100 kilometers from Bombay lies the sleepy coastal town of Alibaug. In recent times, it's seen an upswing in Mumbaikars flocking the place for a relaxed weekend, sampling some of the freshest seafood the Konkan coast has to offer. Few, however, would venture outside their weekend holiday homes to Navagaon, a village about 8 kilometers from Alibaug. This rather nondescript village houses a cemetery, along with an obelisk-like pillar known as the Navagaon Memorial. Miss Malekar, whose first name is Shulamith, and her husband Sharon, would have some of their ancestors buried here.
Legend holds it that Prophet Elijah was traveling on his horses and he stopped on the way, one of the rocks in Alibaug, which is a town near Mumbai, and those marks are still present. Now that place is typically also worshipped by the Hindus because they believe one of their prophets also landed at the same spot. So it's sort of a communal area where we both go and pray. So if you recall what I was telling you about the Thanksgiving and the gratefulness prayers that we do on over Malida, that is usually thanking Prophet Elijah. So his importance is like paramount to us.
Malida? Prophet Elijah? The very Marathi Hindu sounding Miss Malekar and Mr. Bhalkar actually belong to a fast dwindling community, the Bene Israeli Jews. The community has been living in India for over 2000 years. In Hebrew, Bnei Israel means children of Israel. They came back to India from Israel after the fall of King Solomon's Second Empire in 70 AD, fleeing from German persecution. They were shipwrecked near Alibaug, where they continued to stay before they settled in Bombay and Western India. Those who settled on the Konkan coast worked as oil pressers in villages around Alibaug. They observed Shabbat from Friday evening to Saturday evening and were known as Shanivar Telis, or Saturday oil pressers. The Navagama cemetery is known as Jerusalem Gate, a place where her ancestors are buried. The obelisk-like pillar has inscriptions in Hebrew and is a memorial to those who died in the shipwreck. A few kilometers away from the cemetery, carved in a large rock, are mystical markings that are reputed to have been made by Prophet Elijah. It was from this spot that he ascended to heaven, and his chariot left a groove in the rock, while his horse left 2 hoof marks in the stone. The rock is a little difficult to find, but very much accessible to anyone who wishes to see it. But one question remains unanswered. What is Malida?
One of the most vivid memories I have, a typical Indian Jewish Bene Israeli dish, is called the Malida, and it's such a simple dish, but such an integral part of our community. It's made with flattened rice, sugar, grated coconut, lots of dry fruits, cardamom, and that's it. And we use this for Thanksgiving. Anything good that happens in our life or anything that we want to feel grateful for, we would usually have that as a centerpiece of our prayers. And that's perhaps one of the most vivid memories I have in terms of food. Then, of course, food forms such an important part of celebration, right? Be it any religion. So from New Year to Yom Kippur, which is a day of atonement for us, to something like Hanukkah, and tomorrow we have Purim. So Purim is just a festival celebrating Queen Esther. And in India, because it usually comes around Holi, we don't make the traditional Jewish dish, which is the Haman Kashen. We always celebrate it with Puran Poli, because that's what our fellow Hindus are doing at that moment. So we just integrate and merge in together and celebrate with just getting a bit of that Indian side into our cooking. So it's all about basically coexistence, celebrating together, trying to merge and marry together in a way that, that speaks of our Indianness, but doesn't make us forget our roots.
Phil, I also want to, you mentioned, how Puran Poli is something which, you make around. I was also reading about, I was just referring to my notes and I saw that I was reading about Kippur-Chi-Puri. Right?
Yes.
So just tell me a little bit about it, because the moment you think Kippur-Chi-Puri, you were of course thinking Yom Kippur in your head. And you're saying Chi-Puri is of course as Marathi or as Konkani you can get. So help me understand how that bridge has happened and what exactly it is.
So Kippur-Chi-Puri is one of the hardest dishes to make. If I have to name one dish, it's probably going to be that, because it's a little bit akin to a gujia. But imagine a gujia with 50 layers on it, like 50 crisp layers of pastry on it. And we don't have ready-made pastry that we can take out from the freezer. You would pound the pastry and make it hard. And it's just churning it together with corn flour and, some paste that my mom makes. It's slipping my head. But it's just basically, corn flour and ghee.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's corn flour and ghee, and you mix it together and you make it really gelatinous. So it's a lot of effort. So Yom Kippur, we would fast typically for about 25 hours without water and food. And we would break it with the traditional Indian grape juice that we would make from Kale Draksh or Manuka that you call. And after that, as per tradition, you don't eat any food because it becomes very heavy after a long period of fasting. You would break the fast with the first food, which is the puri. And the puri is usually filled with a mixture of semolina and dry fruits, or just grated coconut and dry fruit. So as you can see, there's a theme here: coconuts, dry fruit. We love the rich flavors. So it's all about just making it easy on your tummy, but making sure that you're still full. So that was the whole concept around it.
We must remember that most of the Jewish migration globally was driven by anti-Semitism, and the desire to assimilate was high. The Jews who lived in India never experienced anti-Semitism here, partly thanks to how well they assimilated within the local communities they lived in. And sometimes it meant being flexible with the tenet of Judaism practiced all over the world. Kosher. Kosher are a set of dietary laws which includes separating vessels of dairy and meat. Also, chicken, mutton and fish are to be washed in salt water. But what does one do when, being such a small and scattered community, you don't have access to kosher meat?
I really believe it comes down to that individual or the family on how orthodox they are. So I quit meat when I was about 11 years old. But my parents, when they came to Delhi, they did not have kosher food available. So they ultimately switched to halal. We had no option. But those who are more orthodox and more stringent, they would usually just rely on seafood for their, deli or meat purposes. And most of the places where there is a sufficient amount of Jewish population, you also have people who would voluntarily do it, or you also have kebab houses, which is they could possibly you could procure from them. So for example, in Sydney or maybe in Australia, we don't get kosher goat meat at all. So there is no concept of goat. You would get lamb, but no goat. So unfortunately, Sharon had to switch because we have to stay here and we have to live here. And in terms of convenience as well, it just makes it easy for us just to pick it up at the supermarket or the butcher, because the Jewish population is sometimes very concentrated in particular areas, and it just means that going out of your way to buy everything. So I guess each to their own in that sense, that if they're more orthodox, they would probably rely on seafood more than.
This flexibility on food habits was by no means only practiced by Bene Israelis. Down south in Kerala, there are about 25 Jews living in small pockets of Fort Kochi, Mattancherry and Ernakulam. They are known as the Cochin Jews. When they first arrived, they used their challah bread to break their Shabbat fasts. Now they buy bread from a bakery or make appams with rice flour. The Bene Ephraim Jews of Andhra Pradesh use wheat flour chapatis, and the Bene Menashe Jews of Manipur make rice pancakes. And the Bene Israelis make challah that is like the Gujarati khakra, just wheat dough, oil and water pressed hard onto the tawa. In the absence of kosher meat, many have even turned vegetarian. But this assimilation goes beyond food. Outside of a Jewish home in Andhra, one could find a kolam with the design of the Star of David. But the change is not only coming because of assimilation. Some of the changes are coming in with changing social modes and following more fundamental aspects of Judaism.
So I have continued to go to a Reform synagogue here because I firmly feel that men and women should get equal opportunity everywhere, even in the place of worship. And the synagogue I go to here has a woman rabbi who leads the services, which I find very aspirational and very inspiring for my kids to be. And I guess it's just doing little things in your daily life to integrate some sort of understanding of what religion, what being Jewish means to us, especially for kids. And I think at the end of it is the whole philosophy of being Jewish is do not do unto others that you don't want to be done to you. And in the end, if we turn out to be good humans, the kids are good humans, I think that's my perhaps achievement as a parent. So yes, I would love to be close to a synagogue, but yeah, it's not always possible, I guess.
The larger trend within the Jewish community is now a reverse migration. The already tiny community of about 5,000 Jews is now migrating back to Israel.
Every few months, we come to know of one family that we knew who is migrating to Israel. So all of Sharon's side of family has already migrated to Israel. His sister migrated about 3 months back. So all our friends are in Israel. So hardly anyone left in India for us. I think better prospects, 100%, they feel that they can get better prospects there, especially given that it's also a bit easier to get to Israel because we have a birthright as being Jewish. We can, provide a better future for our kids and, of course, be in the Holy Land, be with fellow Jews, celebrate the same religious events and festivals. So there's a mix of reasons around that. And because once you have one part of the family move, the other part definitely wants to move in as well because they feel that, they can go and support them or just be with them. So yeah, I believe the number that I usually used to get was around 5,000 Jews in India about 6-7 years back or maybe more. I don't think there'll be more than 2,500 anymore, to be honest. And those who have left are basically much more, older population, senior citizens. And not to say that, the younger population is also there, but because the Israeli government sponsors youngsters on something called the birthright trip that happens once in a lifetime. You get to visit Israel free of charge, and when you go to a developed country, you definitely feel like you have better opportunities there. So that becomes another moment of attraction for the youngsters to move as well. So yeah, which is why it's good that we're having this conversation, because I think it will get lost. Hopefully the history of the food and the recipes are somehow preserved in any manner, like written or spoken. So yeah.
Shulamith and Sharon have been migrants many times over. Their ancestors came to India, their parents migrated within India, and now they migrated to Australia. But that brings up a question of identity. In a bitterly divided world where singular identities are pushed upon us, how does someone who identifies as multicultural view their own identity?
Such a tricky question. Yeah, it's a mix of different things. I think identity for me is just bringing out the best of me from different aspects of my life. So if it's about India, just bringing in the sense of how inclusive and diverse India is, and always keeping that at the back of my head whenever I'm doing anything, just to never forget my roots ever. And being Jewish, of course, gives me that opportunity to express who I am, and possibly, just the spiritual side of my life probably comes from being Jewish. And of course, we also have a relationship to Israel, and we can never forget that. And just thankful and grateful that the Jews have at least one place to call their own. And, we know that if anything happens, we have that country to fall back on. It just gives us that bit of reassurance. And speaking about being multicultural and diverse, other than India, I think Australia is a fantastic example where I think I am able to thrive just by being me. And, I don't have to imitate or fake that I'm someone else. And the community, the people are absolutely lovely. And there's a very big Indian population. I reckon it is bigger than the Jewish population as well. So it's huge. So it makes it easy for us to merge into the community. And, I know back in India, sometimes they would, when foreigners would come to visit the synagogue, they would say, "Oh, you are Jewish? Really? Are you Jewish?" And then my grandma would show them the Star of David she would always wear on her neckpiece. But here, when I go and, meet congregation members, they don't ask you those questions, There's that factor that, you are Jewish. They take you as you are, which I feel is really heartwarming, especially when you have kids and you know that they will be, growing in that culture. So all the 3-4 aspects have really molded me into who I am, and I'm able to at least be myself at this point in time, thanks to those.
Distilling the very essence of Judaism is Ezekiel Isaac Malekar, who is the head of the Jewish community in Delhi. He is Shulamith's father, and the same man who migrated to Delhi 45 years ago. He pithily describes the teaching of the Torah, the holy book of Jews, and I quote, "According to Rabbi Hillel, the Torah can be encapsulated into only one commandment. What is hurtful and hateful to you, do not do to another. Everything else is footnote." If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to reach out to me, I am Utsav Memory on Twitter and YVTravel42 on Instagram.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Storytellers and Storytellers, Vineet talks to legendary singer Usha Uttap and writer Shrishti Jha, who authored her biography. The conversation ranges across a wide variety of topics, from becoming a music icon to favorite musical partners in the Indian musical industry, and a whole lot more. On Press Decode, the host takes stock of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. On Postcards from Nowhere, Utsav tells us a story that connects coconuts, the Cold War, and nuclear fusion. And finally, do join Kavita and myself as we celebrate 7 years of IVM Podcast on the 900th episode of Cyrus Says. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you enjoyed this show or any of our shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Word of mouth really does help us. And also, please, a rating if you could. That is also extremely helpful to us. And remember, we're also on YouTube. You can check out ivmpodcast.com/YouTube to get a list of the different channels that we operate on YouTube. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week: SBI Life Insurance, Bank of Baroda, India Water Portal, and Max Life Insurance. Thank you so much for making this possible.
You're the people pleaser, right?
Oh, yes.
Or then desperately seeking the one? Oh wait, you're the one who doesn't think they're ever good enough.
Oh.
So much drama. And for what? Is it doing you any good? Listen to me. I'm Chetna, your favorite positive action coach. Yes, I'm the one who has been dropping all those truth bombs on every episode.
Oh, no.
And it's time you learn to say no to drama. That's also what my podcast is called. And a new episode is out every Monday and Wednesday on the IVM Podcast app, website, as well as all major podcasting platforms.